Hello, and welcome to HOTH 9. So maybe this is your first hackathon, you want to make a game. So the first question you might want to ask yourself is what type of game you want to make. A visual novel, a platformer, a puzzle game, a first-person shooter? Each of these games come with their own unique challenges. Nevertheless, there are many open source and free game engines that will allow you to build these types of games. Godot, RenPy, and Unity are some examples of free-to-use game engines that are relatively beginner-friendly. At ACM Studio, we teach our content using Unity because it is multi-purpose and very popular among indie game developers. Here are some questions to consider while trying to come up with a game idea. 1. What is your core gameplay loop? So, a core gameplay loop is any repetitive gameplay cycle that is designed to keep the player engaged with the game. So for example, in a shooter like Battlefield or Call of Duty, the core gameplay loop is often targeting enemies, shooting them, and identifying more enemies. The player continues to perform this loop endlessly until the game ends. Second, will my game have a narrative? It's not necessary for a game to have a story, but some of the first games ever created were text-adventure games, for example. So if you decide that your game will have a story, how do you tend to communicate it to the player? Maybe it's through dialogue with characters, or maybe there is no dialogue at all and it's completely visual and told through the environment. 3. Mechanics are also an important part in limiting what a player can do and how they can interact with your game. And if you want a very specific tone for your game, maybe consider what the visual and auditory aesthetic would look like. For example, is your game a 3D game? Is it using pixel art? Is it stylized? Are you going for a realistic look? Most game jams are 24 to 72 hours, and some game jams even span for a week or even a month. Hack on the Hill is 12 hours, which to be honest is not a lot of time to make a game. Therefore, something to be wary of is remaining scale conscious. Remember, every feature in the game will incur some amount of development time, which may be more than you anticipate. So here are some things to help save time and determine scope for your game. Consider using open source assets that are free and available to use online. Creating your own art assets takes time, as well as integrating them into the game. Creating UI, animations, character, and environment art may limit your team when development time can be spent somewhere else. Keeping things simple, such as limiting the number of levels, using a simplistic art style, and not introducing complex mechanics might also be helpful in limiting the scope of your game. We'll get into this later, but creating modular tasks to work on if you're currently on a team will help maximize the work your team will be able to get done concurrently and save you a lot of time. You can break programming tasks into separate modules, which can be developed independently and connect with each other as they are built. For example, one person can work on the player controller, another on the AI, and so on. Using a version control system like GitHub is super useful for saving your work and collaborating if you're working in a game engine like Unity. Other developers will be able to pull your changes and vice versa. Also, it is highly recommended that every person works in separate scenes. If multiple people are working in the same scene and try to commit their changes, this will inevitably lead to merge conflicts. It is a good idea to work in separate scenes at first on a specific task and integrate these scenes later when other parts have been tested. So this short video just scratches the surface of game development, and rather than going in depth in this video on a specific topic, we have over 18 written and recorded tutorials on our GitHub covering a variety of gameplay projects from the fundamental rollerball to a first-person shooter to a 2D platformer. Feel free to use these projects for inspiration and a starting off point for your project. Also, I encourage you to read this guide on using GitHub Desktop and Unity. It will save you so much time by walking through the steps needed to set up version control for your team and save a lot of headache in the future. Finally, I wish you good luck in your game development adventure, and I hope you have fun. Happy jamming!